A new dawn is born. Dawn turns to day to dusk, and dusk to darkness. This is the legacy that is left behind by Cleon the First. And as Cleons move through a generation, Terminus begins to be settled by Hari's followers. Every detail was planned by Seldon except one thing: the vault. Welcome to The Road Goes Ever On and On. Today, Sterling and I are talking about the hit Apple TV show Foundation, Episode 3, so spoilers ahead. And you don't have to wait a whole generation to enjoy our content. Just hit that like and subscribe button, turn on that bell for notifications, and with that, Sterling, what do you think about Episode 3?
Oh man, I am absolutely digging this. You know, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about some religious aspects that I'm seeing creeping in a place I didn't expect it.
Okay.
So the Foundation seems like it could be turning religious.
Yes, I did get that feeling too, with Hari being a martyr about everything,
Right?
which you were very correct about. He is definitely the martyr that is keeping the Foundation going. And the time that has passed with, Hari not being around and Gaal not being around, it's all based on faith that they're doing the right things. So I do see the religious aspect.
They don't understand the writing, so at this point, or they don't understand the calculations, so at this point they just have to take the word of the writings. Like nobody can actually look at the calculations again. So there are a few things. Beginning of the episode, when they first see the vault, one of the people says, "What in Seldon's name is this?"
Yep.
So his name is now at being used like a deity. There's a statue of him, which could just be a statue of a great man, but it's also something that's, often done with deities. So that he's definitely being put on a pedestal. The very first episode did say, Gaal in the voiceover says, the heroes and villains fighting for the salvation of mankind, which is a very loaded word. I mean, yes, it could just mean, saving, but it also has that kind of undertone. Salvor's mom made a comment about, don't make it sound like a cult.
Yep.
And then the one that really kind of drove it home the most is when we have this oh shit moment of the Anacreon ships coming. Somebody's first reaction is like, let's consult the predictions.
Right. Let's see what happens. Let's see if you can read this. Do you know what's going on? And she even says, if you could read this, it would give me a lot more faith in this whole process. Even she's starting to doubt in the teachings of Hari.
But I don't think the other people did. When they were all around that thing, the person who's like, let me check, and I'm not talking about the mom, but somebody else is like, let me check the predictions, which to me is kind of like, and I'm not trying to crap on religion, but it sounded very much like some horrible thing is happening right now. Let me read the Bible and see what this thing written so long ago says about this current event, that it's like, how could that predict it, and Salvor kind of reacts with no, I'm gonna check the weapons vault.
Right, yeah.
Reading
And
a book of a dead man isn't useful right now. Let's take stock of what we have. And I'm not trying to crap on religion, but it going to check the predictions, these papers, or it may not be written in paper, but it's very reminiscent of something horrible happened right here, right now, and it's let's go to check the Bible to see what it says about what we should do about this future problem.
Yes.
What's the likelihood that Hari Seldon predicted this exact moment? In fact, when he kind of talked about his predictions, he didn't know who was going to start the end of the Empire. He didn't know how it was going to start. He just knows that enough things are in motion that it is going to happen based off his predictions. So it's like to put him on this pedestal like this and be like, let's consult the predictions just seems very much like they're building towards this like blind faith.
I
Which is
think
even more worrying. Oh, go ahead.
I I think that this might be in Harry's prediction.
We'll see.
I think so. One thing that I kept thinking about in this episode was who contracted the Thespin and the Anacreon terrorist to attack the Sky Bridge. Because that moment is the moment that, to me, seems like the fall of the Empire, because the Empire, they hit him with the big stick, and that, it now seems like the Anacreons are attacking Terminus, which makes me believe that this is all part of Harry's plan. Like, he knew how the Empire would react to it. He's setting all these things in motion, and I think he has more to do with it than we think. And I think we're going to see that play out more of like, oh, this was part of Harry's plan. Just like we saw with him wanting to be exiled with Gale, it's all part of the plan. But we didn't know it was the plan until it happened.
Now, here's the interesting thing about it potentially being part of the plan is there might have been an even further back historical event that could have prompted this. Going back to episode 1, as Demerzel is taking the 2 sets of ambassadors along the Mural of Souls. First of all, I want to make a really quick aside, which is that there was a figure holding a giant globe on its back, and that reminded me very much of Atlas.
Right?
And this mural, she said, does, tell the story of like the 4 centuries of the Empire and the peace. And there was a picture on it that it looked like there was a person holding what looked like a bow. So it did look like it was depicting potentially, I wonder if like it's telling the story of how if there was like a battle that happened, or if that's like how they were brought into the Empire, but I have a feeling that there is like bad blood between the Empire and the Anacreons from a long time ago, and that maybe like a battle or a war, part of it is being depicted on this wall. And of course, this is telling the story of Empire's version. And something that further kind of nailed that was the moment where the Anacreons turned to each other and started talking in their native tongue, is as they were passing that part. And Demerzel stops them and, not these exact words, but basically is like, do you have something to say to the whole class?
Right. Yeah.
And the Anacreon's like, oh, we're just marveling at the benevolence of Empire's reach, which sounded sarcastic to me, like they saw that part and were commenting on that part of history. So I think there's more to it that's going to come out.
I agree with that. What I am a little confused about is that, they show the bow and arrow, that the arrows don't have metal in them, but they have enough metal to make ships? That's where I kind of have a little disconnect with the Anacreons, and I don't know, are they getting metal? Like, it seems like a civilization that uses wooden tipped arrows to survive wouldn't waste their metal on a ship. I don't know. It kind of doesn't make sense to me how they have these ships, and maybe we'll get it more fleshed out about the Anacrean culture and what's to come. But it does seem a little off to me.
There was a minor line in the first episode where when they were talking about what started that whole kerfuffle was I think one of like the sacred Anacrean meteors drifted close enough to Thespin that the Thespins basically said that this is like now out of their territory, which kind of makes it seem like maybe the Anacreans do have that metal from those meteors, and maybe they have been hiding.
So maybe these are like their
They're
first ship. Well, no, because Hugo, who is a Thespin, he was like, those are Anacrean gunships. So
right,
these aren't like. But he does go to Anacreon, so maybe he
right.
sees it more often.
I don't know. Well, I think this is going to be explained because it definitely seems weird, but not necessarily like I don't think it's a mistake.
Right.
I think it's something that they like purposefully made kind of vague or confusing to kind of throw us off.
I agree. I just want to apologize for the last episode. I rescind everything I said about, well, not, there are still a couple things I had a little bit of problem with in that last episode, but I want to say that, I was annoyed with the speed of the pacing. I was feeling like Gail and Harry and Raish were going to be these like main characters, and I feel like Salvor is the more. I still feel like we're gonna get Gail back in some
Yeah,
way because she is the narrator and she talks about how this is her story.
I
And
think she's more than the narrator.
you think she's more than the narrator
I think there's a connection with somebody else.
with Salvor Hardin? Well,
Oh yeah.
I do. They do both predict They both have that sense where they can predict things.
I
Do
think I think that's Gail's zygote.
Okay, so when I first watched the episode, I was thinking that Salvor was that one girl that was like, I'm carrying it, doesn't matter, like, I might not be able to carry it, so I'm gonna carry it to term. So I thought maybe that's why she was special. But on the second watch, it does seem like the mother and father could be the parents, but I still think that she's Gail's daughter.
I think she's Gail's zygote, and that was like maybe it was maybe those two couldn't conceive, and or they felt like it was important to continue Gail's legacy, that it was like not her fault that she was shot off, and so this was like a chance to honor somebody great, and something along those lines. Which the interesting thing there is, I think that she might be partially asleep, and so I think kind of like Hugo, I don't think she's going to age, so it's very likely that if they meet up,
She'll be young
that those
again.
two end up like the age of siblings versus like mother daughter.
Gail might even be younger than her.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right,
hey.
right,
I mean, technically, my body's older than you, but my age is younger than you.
right. I wonder how much more time jumping they're going to do. I do feel like this is an important time period that we're going to spend a good amount of time in, but I kind of wonder whether or not future seasons could be like a different time period, because it does seem like there's a lot of interesting stuff that we can cover with the foundation.
Yeah, it really does have like a wide net. And I mean, I really liked that we saw the whole process of the dusk going to, and you were basically right. You predicted there was going to be a darkness,
It was a joke. It was a really dumb joke
I
of
know.
mine.
You're like, what if he's still alive and they bring out another one and they call him the Darkness? But he
No, I
is.
think I called him Knight. I called him Knight. But
Oh,
same idea.
oh,
I
right.
actually think my naming was better.
Yeah, they should have been Night, not Darkness. But I did like that when there was all four of them for a moment, and they were like, "Okay, Brother Darkness," and I was like, "That counts. That counts in my book."
Oh yeah. Okay, so that whole portion, by the way, first 20 minutes,
Phenomenal.
emotional.
Oh,
And emotional about characters I didn't think I would get emotional about. I didn't think I would feel for Empire. I didn't think I'd feel for Demerzel. And
oh
both of
my
them
gosh, both
were
of them.
tugging at my heartstrings. That was such a good, like, after the brutal act that we had just seen play out in the end of the second episode, and knowing that that's the choice that was always made. So like Dusk made that choice at some point,
Right.
and yet they made me feel for both of them, and it was so good.
I also feel they made an argument for nature versus nurture in this episode. There was, talking about what the new day is going to do, like the old dawn, the new day, how he's going to handle these rebellions. I think that they had really good arguments for the nature aspect of the Empire. And, Demerzel says to Dusk as he's about to die, "Oh, like, how do you want to spend your last day?" They always want to do it differently. Like, you always do it differently. So, like, a part
Right.
of me feels like that is part of who they are, from, like, how they're expressing who they are, what they've learned from being the Empire. And if you think about it, most of these clones have only known peace. So the nature has been relatively the same for every one of these clones. Well, now we're finally getting into war times, and now it's going to be different. And I do think, we see all the different Dusks that had passed on. They were all they all did different things. One was an
Right.
alchemist, one was the studier, and our Dusk was the painter. Like, they all have these different
Right.
interests and different passions. It makes me feel like the nature has changed the course of their lives, and now that we're in a wartime, I think we're going to see a very different Cleon than we've seen before.
I definitely think so. And I think that's so interesting to be able to. I mean, this isn't the first show to have done this, but it's still a very interesting portrayal of like having the same actor play kind of the same person but in very different ways. And I think that this is very interesting. I like all of the different actors that they have
Oh
playing
yeah.
all of the different parts. Like I was surprised that there's like a different actor playing like the older version of Dusk, and I really like that. It's great choice. I think they show an interesting range, but they still seem like the same person, but also different. And then they'll be able to have those same actors playing, you know, this one is playing Cleon the eighth or something like that. Next time it's going to be playing Cleon the ninth, and those are going to be, subtly different portrayals, or even not subtly different. We'll see. I'm very interested in kind of seeing how that goes and how that plays out.
Well, even in this first episode, like, I felt like the day that we saw in episode 1 was the dusk that we saw in this episode, and the dawn that played the day technically in this episode, Lee Pace's character, he knocked it out. Like, he seemed like a more caring version of day than the previous day. So I will tell you one thing, talking about dawn, dusk, day, previous day, tomorrow, yesterday, it gets a little confusing. But I do think that that Lee Pace's acting in this is pretty on point.
Right. Yeah, we'll have to figure out some kind of way of keeping of being able to express to others who you're talking about, like knowing which Cleon it is and then which part of the cycle that Cleon is in. So it's like day version of Cleon the Eighth or something along those lines. But
Right.
it definitely creates a little bit of confusion when trying to talk about it, but such a brilliant portrayal. And kind of with that brilliant portrayal, going back to Demerzel and how she also had me feeling things. She, in one of the episodes, I don't remember which one, she didn't want, I think the last episode, she didn't want Dawn to see her kind of non-humanity. It's very important for her to be as human as possible in order to be human. And yet, I don't know if she needs to act human because she seems very human. It I think I saw love and then what
Grief.
seemed like grief and what seemed like a kind of a coldness. It now seems that we've learned that she's sad that she's always losing these. So it's almost like trying not to get too attached, but there's a sadness to it. It's not it didn't seem at all robotic or android, of like not being able to connect, but rather almost not wanting to connect, which is so human.
I thought it was her whole character from these first 3 episodes brilliantly done. First episode, I took her as this like madam character that basically is like their chauffeur that's just like keeping him in the bounds of where he needs to be as the little young empire. And like I thought she was like super strict and like not gonna be fun and had like no emotion to her. Second episode, you find out a robot. Okay, maybe that explains why she is the way she is. And then this episode, so many things, like she's like crying when none of the Cleons can see her, and it's just like, you always leave me, like you are enough,
Right.
but you always leave me, like
Right.
that's so heartbreaking.
And then like her ability to guide darkness to his ascension was also because he wasn't ready, but like the way that she both firmly took his arm and put her hand on his back, but also with like a kind gentleness. I think making it clear like it's time, but also not doing it with like any force or malice. But instead, it's almost more of like it's almost more like support to help you get through something that you don't know if you can do on your own.
Right. Helping him cross the rainbow bridge.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is wild. So an interesting thing that, and I don't know if this is completely true, but because it's based off of calculations that I don't necessarily know the start of, but I think in the first episode or something like that, they said what the current Cleon was and how many centuries had passed, and dividing among all of the Cleons, I think that they live like possibly 100 years, and so I think like their date, like their expiration date, is planned.
Well, I don't think it's 100 years because Cleon the First was 400 years ago when he's building the Sky Bridge,
Okay.
and we're on Cleon the 14th now, and that's 400 plus 35.
35. Okay, yeah,
Or 36. It's 36. Because it's 1 year after what we saw Salvor and the kids go through.
that's right.
The weird math. I had to like go back and like do all the math because it was 400 years from the Sky Bridge for Cleon, and then 19 years later after that, and then another
Right.
17 when we go to the end of Terminus. And we see the young or the new young Dawn or older Dawn.
Right, older, yeah,
Which,
which was interesting to bring in like another actor,
right.
and sad to see the mural getting taken down
Which in the
because
history of legacies, when we're talking about Cleon the First legacy, he lost his bridge, the sky bridge
right,
that was his legacy, and that was big, talking point for them was, what is the legacy of Cleon the First at this point then? And they're like,
oh
well,
yeah,
we are, and I think that was Dusk's version of trying to leave his legacy was painting that mural over the new Cleon, and then the new Cleon was just like,
right.
nope, get rid of it.
Speaking of legacies, I'm curious what the Foundation's legacy is going to be, because kind of going back to the religious-y kind of aspects, and the meeting that they had about like which timekeeping thing should we keep. It was interesting that they chose the sundial for its like simplicity and the likelihood that it's going to work everywhere, but it's less precise. So I wonder like how many times they have to make these calculations and keep having to, like give something up in every single one of these decisions. And like what's the group that's going to come out of this? Like after the fall, if how much civilization do you really have if you're being given like sundials? And
Yeah. And
it so it's interesting whether like the choices that they have to make and the consequences of those choices, like the knowledge that will be left for the people. It just kind of makes me wonder like what kind of future are they really planning for?
yeah, yeah, how bad is it going to be? Like, are we, because if you think about it, we have a whole galaxy, right? Are we losing space travel? I would assume we're losing some space travel because we're using sundials. And also, that was the other thing I was thinking about these sundials. Like, do they work on every planet in the galaxy? Right? Like,
Right.
if you are stuck, like, is their plan to start the Foundation on Terminus, keep procreating life out there, and then it's like reset there, and then maybe the Empire will come up from Terminus eventually in thousands of years? Like, they'll have to figure out space travel again. They have to figure out XYZ. Like, that's what I don't know. I don't know where it's going.
Right.
But I don't feel
I
like Sundial is reliable.
it well it yeah, it is, as long as it's not like a place that has too much vegetation and therefore shade. I don't know.
Well,
Like
but like, what if
we'll
it
see.
has two suns? And the sundial
Right.
only works for a Earth calendar, like an Earth day, like a 12-hour Earth day, or sunlight in, that exact time. What if anyone spins
It would
slower?
it would regardless of what the cycle is, it would break it into 24 hours.
But so that's what I
Or
mean. Like,
not hours. It break it into 24 chunks. 24 equal sized chunks, except it's only doing the day portion. So like obviously those chunks will be shorter in the winter and longer in the summer. So it equally divides daylight
but
is all
what?
it's doing. It's not
But
because I think that's part of what they were saying about not being precise.
oh, gotcha. Okay, that makes more sense then. Because like, if it's
Like at middle of the day, it's always going to be dead center. At the beginning and end of daylight, it's always going to be at the end.
okay,
And
yeah.
it's just going to divvy up the time in between equally. But if you only have 2 hours of sunlight in winter, you know, then like what an hour is going to be super short, and if like summers are super long and you have, like 30 hours of sunlight, that's just going to be broken down into, like 12 equal parts, and they're going to be long. So
That makes more
it's
sense.
it's very imprecise.
I was more
Um,
thinking of like Tatooine with two suns, where I'm
yeah,
like, that's a little tricky because like one might
yeah,
be, but we haven't really seen any planets in Foundation with two suns yet, so we'll just
yet,
say that maybe they don't have them.
but maybe they do.
I do think there will be a payoff with the Bishop's Claw. There's going to be some.
Oh, I wanted to talk about Mabel too. Just the fact I liked her.
I like her too. I think she's great. But in every episode, they've talked about a Bishop's Claw. The very first episode, the kids see, oh, there's a Bishop's Claw over there. Second
Yep.
episode, they talk about the Bishop Claw in the simulator. This one, we see a real Bishop's Claw. I think there's going to be a very big payoff with the Bishop's Claw. Like, I think there's going to either be a
And
big fight or it'll save them, but there will be something.
right. Yeah, I mean that could be the way to get out of the crappy situation that is happening next episode, because like it does seem like Maple and Salvor have a little bit of a bond,
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
you know? Like I think that there is a certain amount of respect. I mean, I think Salvor definitely respects Mabel. I think Mabel would be willing to kill Salvor, but also like in the right circumstance, like not,
Yeah.
And after like taking the arrow out, I think you could possibly be right that
I think we're going to get some payoff.
I I like where your head's at.
Another question I have. What do you think
Okay.
about that little boy? That little kid?
Is that one of the ghosts? Like, is that so? Where did the vault come from? Is it alien? Is it something that
I
the Empire
think
put there? Is it something Harry put there?
I think Harry put it there. I think Harry is like 10.
Master manipulator.
Yeah, I think he's playing 10D chess and we're only playing 2D chess. And he's like 5 steps ahead 300 times, and like I think he's got so many plans that are going to like pop out. I think Harry put the vault there and hasn't told
Interesting.
anybody
Okay.
about the vault.
Yeah.
Because the vault does seem like it's on the side of the Foundation,
It
in my opinion.
it does, but also, in the first episode, I think Gail in the voiceover said something about like it wasn't expected that somebody would be able to get so close so soon.
Oh, does she say that?
So something like that at the end of
Hmm.
the first episode. So it does seem, but that scale, like that might not be.
Right.
Harry and Gale are two separate things. Like it's not. Harry hasn't necessarily opened up everything to Gale. So who knows? I think that's actually a very real possibility. So when I first watched this episode, I misunderstood the voiceover, and I thought that she was saying that it was alien, not that there are a bunch of different myths about, how it got there, that it could be alien, it could be this. And I actually got really excited because that means all the stuff that we've seen so far is like part of the Empire, and that wouldn't be alien. It's like what what
What?
otherworldly thing are we
Yeah.
going to see? And it's still a possibility, and still could be very interesting. But I do think it's interesting that it's like that. That could just be a myth. Who knows? Like,
So you think the vault projected that little kid?
possibly, yeah. I kind of think that.
You know it's crazy because I did not have a single theory about it, about that little kid, But the weird thing was that the kid did the exact same thing each time. Like, from where she was on the goggles, like, it was the exact same movement, does the exact
Yeah.
same turnaround with the knife, like, every single time. So I felt like it had to be. I didn't know if it was bait from the Anacreons, like it was just some kid that they just kept sending out to get them closer, but that didn't make sense because they were coming in the first time.
Right.
I like the vault idea. I would have not thought that.
I think. I mean, it kind of seems like the vault's ghost that people have been talking about from
I want to see the ghost.
the first episode.
Right. I
You know,
forgot about the ghost.
except instead of being a ghost, it's a projection from the past or so. Who knows? I don't. We'll see.
I think we met the mule.
Ooh.
I think Hugo's the mule.
Oh, he. I could see that. Like he's moving stuff around.
Yeah, that's why I thought he was like. At one point, they even make a reference that he's a pirate because they're talking about rum, sugar, and work, and I'm like, oh, he's basically a pirate. I think he's the mule.
Oh man, I like that. I like that a lot.
I hope so. I love him. He's a great character. He's awesome.
I really liked him too. And I mean they jumped right into that relationship. Like or not they jumped us into the period where they are already having it.
Right.
You know, it's interesting the way that time moves, you know, or like the things that they choose to show. You know, like
Yeah.
they're choosing to show a very interesting moment and they're not trying to make it seem like all the important relationship moments would happen at the same time as like an important event like an invasion, you know? So they're like, okay, you know what? Like relationships are probably established at this point.
Yeah.
Let's just jump right into it. And I kind of like that.
I like it a lot more. Now seeing this episode, this is why I did the full apology. I felt like that second episode, I felt like there were so many things I needed to know that I thought were
Right.
important, but it made me realize how much of that stuff was not important. Like the foundation meeting wasn't
Right.
like we don't need to know about that. We just need to know that the foundation is on Terminus. But I will say that yes, I was wrong. I did feel like I was missing a lot of things that I thought were going to be important to the story that they were telling. However, I do appreciate the way that they're doing this. It felt like the first two episodes were like a prequel to this world, and now we're like jumping into like what's actually happening. And so I rescind my previous statement.
I mean, so in your defense, I think a lot of shows are going towards 8 episodes. This is 10 episodes, so they have a little bit more space to kind of do that. I think most shows wouldn't have been able to dedicate 2 episodes to like setting up a world and then kind of leaving a bunch of people from that setup out because they're not really involved anymore. So I think that like compared to the way that most shows move, seeing episode 2, you would think there's a bunch that I'm missing. Like,
Yes.
you know, like what I wanna know. Like we can't constantly move at this pace with like 8 episodes, otherwise.
Yeah, that's where I was like, okay, what is happening?
You're like,
Like,
put on the brakes, slow down, let me enjoy it.
wait, Gail seems like the main character, but yet she has all these things that she's doing, and we got to jump 35 years in the future, but like, what's happening to Gail? I don't know. She's just doing all this stuff, making all these relationships.
I've got a question.
Yes.
And I don't even know the answer. So you may not know the answer. You may not have any theories, ideas, anything like that. But I think in the last episode they talked a little bit about ghosts, and now they're talking. Actually, in the first episode they brought up, you know, like the vault.
Yes.
You know, the one kid wanted to see the ghost.
Right.
And then this episode, in the voiceover, they talked a decent amount kind of about ghosts and how they like they haunt all of the living. You know? And I'm kind of curious, like, what your thought is about that kind of like idea, potentially what you think it means or where it's going, or anything along those lines.
I do feel like we are going to see more of Harry Seldon in some way. I feel like because he is cast by a, or he's played by a pretty famous actor, like I would say after Lee Pace, he's like the second known actor in this show. And I don't feel like you would just use him in like a bit part where it's, you just see him for a minute. I'm not saying he's going to have a force ghost or anything, but I do feel like the ghost of Harry is going to eventually push them the way that they need to go.
Or maybe they're still using him. Like maybe he's playing the statue.
He's playing the statue? Oh,
Yeah, like he's
the actor's playing the statue. They just paint him every day. He just stands there.
every day he shows up on set.
That would be good. What if? Okay, I'm gonna go way crazy here. What if Harry, his life force, is in that knife that he was stabbed with?
Or the little thing behind his ear.
Or the thing behind his ear. That's another good point. The reason well, the thing that made me think about the knife is they throw the knife in with Gale at that last moment. Or Raish throws it in with Gale, the knife. And I was thinking like, oh, maybe he didn't want to be caught by it. Like, whether he wanted to be caught with the murder, but he was covered in blood, so I feel like they would have figured out it was him anyway. So him throwing the knife in there, and maybe he put the thing on the back of his ear on the knife in there, maybe. So I do feel like we're going to get Hari Seldon back somehow.
Okay.
In the show. I don't know if he'll be a ghost or recordings of him, but I do think we'll see more of him.
They do have the ability to clone. It is possible that that's like only the wealthiest or only the Empire has that technology. So who knows?
What do you think happened to Raish?
I don't know. I don't know. I think he knew that he was signing his death warrant, because like that scene to me was heartbreaking in the simulation room.
Right.
Where like he had a kind of sadness that wasn't like happy sadness, like he was imagining this wonderful life. It was like he was imagining a life that he wants so badly and he knows he can't get.
But I don't know if he's dead. I don't think he's dead. I think we're going to see more of him somehow.
Okay.
I, again, don't know how all these people are. Maybe they're all in life pods that have kept them alive until 35 years, but... Or maybe he's like in a prison that is just keeping it... I don't know. I couldn't tell you on that aspect. And with that, I think our journey has come to an end. Thank you for joining us. Next week, we will be watching episode 4 of Foundation. So come back here next week. I'm Mark. This is Sterling.
Thanks.